Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today to do a Friday Reads video. I'm going to wrap up the week in reading and anything else that's been going on. The big book news that happened this week is obviously the Women's Prize long list was announced, and I did a reaction video to that. I'll put that in the description box down below if you have not seen it and would like to check it out. It was pointed out to me by not one, but I think two or three people that I planted my birthday wish on Demon Copperhead winning the Women's Prize because the winner is going to be announced on my birthday. And maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot because the Pulitzer Prize could veer away from a book that is getting recognized by another book award. That is an interesting thought. I had not considered that. It will be interesting because the Women's Prize will actually be announced after the Pulitzer Prize. So the Pulitzer will be announced in May. The Women's Prize will be announced in June, although the shortlist will have been announced. So we will know if Demon Copperhead made it onto that. It's a little pickle I hadn't really considered when I planted my birthday wish on Demon Copperhead. Obviously, I do want Demon Copperhead to win the Pulitzer. Maybe in an ideal world it wins both. It's actually got a steep hill to climb to win the Women's Prize because Barbara Kingsolver has previously won. It's interesting that there are two people who have previously won on the long list, but I'm not going to get into it a whole lot right now. It's just interesting. And I've been thinking about it even more because I've been working on my Pulitzer Prize predictions, which I'm hoping to film next week. I've made a lot of progress on just putting it all together and collecting some thoughts. Now I just need to film, and obviously that's not going to happen until next week. And next week is going to be interesting as well because we will have the International Booker long list, I believe on Tuesday. And my plan right now is to do a reaction video to that. A lot will depend on whether I'm able to film it on Tuesday. The way things go usually, the way it went for the Women's Prize at least, I got interrupted in the middle of the announcement by work, and work always has to come first. So I had to go do work, and then I had been planning to film on my lunch break, and I couldn't film on my lunch break because I ended up not getting a lunch break. So I had to take a break in the afternoon, and then it's a whole day thing trying to get it filmed, edited, and uploaded. It's a lot. So I'm anticipating the same thing will happen on Tuesday. Hopefully I'll have a reaction up on Tuesday. We'll see how that goes. And then I want to film my Pulitzer Prize predictions for next week as well. I usually do them in March. May is a month later than when they usually announce them. Maybe this is becoming the new normal. I don't know, because since the pandemic, the announcement has strayed away from April more often than not, but we'll find out. The only other thing I want to talk about before I get to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video, and I should mention I finished 3 books this week, is movies. The Oscars are going to be on Sunday. If you follow along, you know I'm an Oscar fanatic, even though I don't always agree with the winner. They can frequently be frustrating and anger-inducing and all of that, but I will be watching. I've watched, at this point, I've managed to get most of the big nominated movies. I have not seen The Fabelmans, Women Talking, or The Whale. Those are the ones that are nominated in major categories that I have not seen yet. Not really looking forward to The Whale. Part of why I haven't seen it is, I mentioned briefly, where I live in a rural area. So the thing is, these movies don't necessarily come to my town, and when they do, it's like blink and you miss them. So I kind of rely on streaming for a lot of these. And this is the first year since the pandemic that movies haven't quickly jumped to streaming, if not gone directly to streaming. And I understand why, but it has made it a little frustrating to catch up. And The Whale is still at the sort of premium rental level, and I don't want to pay $20 to see it. So I'm going to wait on that one. I am hoping that maybe we'll see The Fabelmans before the Oscars, but we're running out of time on that one. And I do really want to see Women Talking because I liked the book. I think The Fabelmans is probably the one that I would choose to prioritize before the Oscar telecast, if at all possible. I did watch Aftersun this week, and I really liked it. I think Aftersun is actually my favorite movie from 2012. Hi, Editing Greg is jumping in to say, I don't know why I said 2012. That's not what year it is. It hasn't been that year for a long time. I don't know. Anyway, back to it. And I did not expect that going into it. I didn't actually know a whole lot about it. All I knew was that it was the story of a woman looking back at a vacation she had taken with her father when she was about 11 years old. and that Paul Mescal was nominated for Best Actor. That's all I really knew about it. It's actually really emotionally devastating. It's a very slow movie, but it does a lot of really interesting things with reflections, and it sort of plays with memory in very interesting ways. And it's a beautiful movie about relationship and memory, and I don't want to say much more about it because I think part of my love for the movie comes from the experience of watching it and figuring out where it was going along the way. So I don't want to ruin that for anyone else, but I really loved it a lot. So I'm glad I managed to watch it. I watched Empire of Light. I thought it was good. Olivia Colman is reliably excellent. And it was funny because I watched it the night before the Women's Prize long list was announced. And there were, I think, 2 books on the long list that kind of reminded me of Empire of Light. And that was just an interesting trajectory. I tried to watch Triangle of Sadness and I bailed with an hour left. So if you're unfamiliar, it's a movie about rich people on a boat and the employees who work for them. It's not all rich people. And there is a shipwreck. So I bailed at the point of the shipwreck. And I think from what I've read, because I looked into a couple of articles and things about it, a lot of the thematic material is crammed into that last hour. However, there's no reason anybody would have needed to sit through an hour and a half to get to that point. You could have done shorthand in the first part to get to the island, and then it would have been fine. And it strikes me as a movie that is extremely indulgent and determined to shock you. And I really dislike things that are determined to shock you just for the sake of shocking you. And that definitely feels like this movie. So I hated it, bailed, have no plans to go back to it. So that was my movie watching this week, and that's the big news in the book world, which is the Women's Prize. And next week we'll have the International Booker and hopefully my Pulitzer Prize predictions. We'll see how all of that goes. Let's move into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video because, again, I finished 3 books, and I'm feeling kind of proud of that. Although I was mostly done with one of them by the time I checked in with you last week. That's The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. And I was really enjoying this book. I still like it. I will say, and obviously I can't talk about it because that would spoil a lot. The ending lost it a little bit for me. It was a little... I won't go into it. The ending lost it a little bit for me, but it was still a really fun book. So if you did not see my Friday Reads last week, or if you need a refresher, The Golden Spoon is a mystery novel that is set during the filming of a show that is remarkably similar to The Great British Bake Off. Although it is American and the cast is half the size of what you would see on a typical season of The Great British Bake Off. And in this world, there are some things that are sort of setting up conflict or potential conflict. For instance, there is a sort of Mary Berry figure, but like a much more aggressive Mary Berry figure, like someone who has been sort of exploiting a sweet Mary Berry image, but is not actually that. And the show is actually filmed on her family estate in Vermont. So it's her house. But there is a tent and all of that. Like, they don't change locations. And she has been the only host of the show, and host and judge, by the way. There are no hosts. It was just her. And now this season, they have introduced a male co-host to judge with her. And then, of course, there are all the contestants. And what I really like about it is... Well, of course, I was naturally inclined to gravitate towards something that's sort of like a bake-off themed mystery. I love the Great British Bake Off and just baking competitions in general. So, yeah, that was always going to grab my attention. But I like that it teases the discovery of the body in the very opening of the book. But then it takes a step back to when the show was getting ready to film and the first days of filming. So you really get a chance to get to know the characters. Some of them get eliminated, not in a murdery kind of way, just in general. And complications happen, and it gets set. It almost like teases with you about, so who's going to get murdered? Can you guess? And things like that. And I appreciated that chance to get to know the characters and really get settled in to the world of these characters, what they have been through, and what might be setting them up to become a murderer or a murder victim. But again, the ending kind of lost it. But I really did enjoy it. It was fun. It was exactly what I needed at this point in time. So that was fantastic. So I finished that, I think, Saturday afternoon. And I took a couple of days to figure... Sunday, I went and focused again on The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. So what I said last week is I had been feeling stress every time I picked up The Grapes of Wrath. There's still a degree of that, but I took a step back because since this is part of my Pulitzer Prize project, it won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction, I want to say 1939. And because it's part of my project, I was taking a lot of notes every time I picked it up. And it just felt like a chore every time I picked it up. So I was going to get away from that. So Sunday, I picked the book up, spent a lot of time with it, made it, I think, maybe a little over 50 pages into the book. I did end up taking notes because there were just some things in there that were like, okay, that's going to be like a big quote for this book, or I really appreciate what's being done here. And I think it's important to understanding of the book. So I did end up taking a small degree of notes. However, I allowed myself to kind of cool it a bit. And then when we got into the week, I got away from The Grapes of Wrath again. It's not the fault of the book, and I don't think it's the fault of my plan to slow down on the... Well, my initial plan was to stop taking notes, and it turned into slow down on the note-taking. I think that is a good plan for this book. So I'm going to continue with this, and I'll continue with the plan, but let's talk about the audio that distracted me. I think Monday or Tuesday... I think it was Tuesday, actually. Monday was just a busy day, and I didn't get much reading done at all. Tuesday, I picked up the audio of A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik. Backman. This is something that I've been curious to read for a long time because Joel read it a couple of years ago at this point and loved it. My mother-in-law, Joel's stepmother, read it not long after Joel did and also loved it. And they have both gone on to read a lot of Fredrik Backman books and have liked pretty much all of them. I think at this point, my mother-in-law has read every Fredrik Backman book that has been translated into English. So there's been a lot of pressure to read Fredrik Backman. And I've been curious. I shouldn't say pressure, but, it's been something that I have been meaning to do for a long time. And in January, we went and we saw the movie A Man Called Uwe with Tom Hanks, which is, in English is referred to as A Man Called Otto. They changed his name to Otto because Uwe is very Swedish. And I liked the movie. I thought it was pretty well done. I thought Tom Hanks was great in it. I love the woman who plays the neighbor. It's different. They changed things. So in the book, the woman who moves in across the street is Persian or Iranian. And in the movie, she is, I think, Mexican. Definitely some kind of Latinx. So there are definitely differences, and it's one of those interesting cases where sometimes whatever property you engage with first becomes how you think of the story. And I think when Joel went into the movie, he had enough distance from the book that he was able to enjoy the movie on its own without being like, that's not how it happened in the book. But I just saw the movie a little over a month ago, and as I was reading the book, I kept thinking to myself, that's not how it happens in the movie. And I think the problem with that was I tended to like the way the movie handled things a little bit better, which is kind of surprising. I enjoyed the book, but I think it's one of those circumstances where when you see something and like it and then go to engage with the book, you want to hold on to the things that you liked, and sometimes they're different. It is a little surprising that this is a book that I was kind of in the mood for right now because... and trigger warning, there is suicidal ideation. There are suicide attempts in the book. And I think I didn't know that going into the movie, but I knew that going into the book. And because I was prepared for it and I knew that there was a lot of heartwarming messaging that went alongside that, I would be okay with it. I felt prepared. So it ended up being the perfect thing. And I really got captivated and caught up in it. So by Wednesday evening, I was done. And I can't remember how long the audio is, but basically what happened is my boss was out of the office for most of the day on Wednesday, and I was doing a lot of busy work that just, I was able to put in my headphones and do the work and listen to the book for a good chunk of the day. And part of why I finished that and not The Grapes of Wrath is that I was able to listen while doing, mindless work that you don't really need to pay that much attention to, because sometimes you just need a day to catch up on that stuff. And that was Wednesday for me, for sure. So I finished it really quickly. And then the funny thing is, yesterday I started thinking about, so yesterday was Thursday, today is Friday as I'm filming this. That's why, if you're new here, hi. I film my Friday reads on a Friday, but then I schedule them on a Saturday. So when I say yesterday, I mean Thursday. I was thinking about what my next audio would be. I really considered picking up The Grapes of Wrath, and I did something else. There was no audiobook that was jumping out as appealing to me, so I'm just going to revisit maybe today when I have time, or probably tonight more likely, and pick something. I'm not going to force myself to pick an audiobook. So what I did yesterday instead, I mentioned a couple of times in recent Friday reads that I've had a library apocalypse. You know that thing where you have a bunch of library holds that all have different amounts of holds on them, and somehow they all become available at once? That happened to me. And I reached a decision about My Government Means to Kill Me. I really want to read that book. However, it's at this point overdue. So I'm just going to return it and get on the hold list for it again, because I don't want to keep holding on to it. I don't think that's fair to the people who are waiting and want, especially since I need to finish The Grapes of Wrath. It's a book in print, so it'll just be better. But yesterday I did pick up a book that I knew I would be able to do quickly, and that is The Philosopher Queens, The Lives and Legacies of Philosophy's Unsung Women, edited by Rebecca Buxton and Lisa Whiting. So one of the prompts on the Montana Book Company's reading challenge for 2023 is to read a book of philosophy by a woman. And when I talked about how I was planning to meet these, said I was going to have to figure that one out because I don't really like philosophy. I took a philosophy class in community college, and I do think at least partially I hated the class because the way the discussions were handled, it makes it feel like, is there really any point discussing philosophy? Because you're never going to get an answer. Everything is just arguing and debating forever and ever and ever. Amen. So that was my ultimate impression. And I really struggle with philosophy and philosophical works. So Jen the librarian recommended this as a way around that. So technically, this is a bit of a cheat because it's not a specific book of philosophy by a woman. However, there are biographical details in here, but each section of the book really grapples with what the philosophy this particular woman espoused and what it meant for the overall movement and evolution of philosophy in general, which I did find interesting. However, because I don't like philosophy, I found the biographical details way more interesting. And honestly, that is what propelled me through the book. But just like quick demonstration. So the first one is Diotima, circa 400 BCE. So it introduces her with this illustration, and then it will talk about her for a couple of pages, and then you'll go on to the next one. That's the way it works. And that digestible format is really what got me through the book. Again, because I don't want to read a whole book of philosophy. Please don't make me. One of the ones that I was unfamiliar with, it was really, really interesting, was Iris Marion Young. I bookmarked it because that's a person I was completely unfamiliar with. And it really talks in that section about how her philosophy was informed by her life. She had ended up in foster care, and it was just a really interesting section. And then another one, some of the ones that I found most interesting were the ones that are later in the book. And I think maybe that because it feels more relevant, but it probably makes sense. There was also a section in the back that talked about the philosophy behind privacy, which is obviously a huge concern right now because of social media, and how, say, my right to privacy applies when I have created this channel and I'm sharing details of things that I have read and everything with you, and how that might be complicated, but also what that means for my privacy when I create a YouTube account, and then YouTube is owned by Google and they have access to all of the information of my accounts and things that I use to create this channel. So that was interesting and felt very relevant. So I got through that. I had actually started it, I think 2 weeks ago. I was able to renew this, so it's not overdue. So I had a chunk of it done. And then last night I just turned on some silly TV and focused mostly on this and managed to get through it. So that was nice. So now my plan going forward is to get back to the Grapes of Wrath this weekend and hopefully make another good chunk of progress. I'm sad that I only had one day where I made a lot of progress on it last weekend, and then the week just got away. But that's, the way it goes. I can't really control. And then, like I said, Wednesday was more conducive to an audio because my boss was out of the office, but I still have things to do. So I just was able to use it as a day to do a lot of mindless catch-up stuff where I could listen to an audiobook. And, it's not possible to ignore work and read a physical book. So I'll get back to it this weekend. I haven't decided what my next audiobook will be. I think I have an idea, but we'll see how I'm feeling when I can actually start an audiobook. And I don't want to promise anything until that has happened. So, and then I don't want to make any promises about what my next physical book would be until I have finished The Grapes of Wrath, because at this point, it's probably going to be another week or more before I finish The Grapes of Wrath. So we'll just see wherever I am at that point. I think that's everything for this Friday Reads video. I'd love to hear what you've been up to, what you've been reading, watching, if you're going to be anticipating the Academy Awards. I don't know what's going to happen in a lot of those categories. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And as always, I appreciate your time. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.